Hey everybody, Ben here from the Bonehead podcast, and welcome to Top 5 Friday. Every Friday we get together and we have a look at the top 5 something probably to do with Blood Bowl. Now, we've done a whole bunch of top 5s, and the other week we did the top 5 common rules mistakes, which was a really good one. But it did kind of go a little bit into the nuances of having a game of Blood Bowl with somebody. So Eduardo, one of our viewers, flagged up and said, hey, some of this goes more into Blood Bowl etiquette than just the rules. So would it be worth having a chat with everybody and kind of seeing what their top 5 tips are for Blood Bowl etiquette, for the art of constructing a social contract with someone when you're playing a game? Basically, how do you make the scene? How do you set the scene to give you as great an opportunity as possible to have a really great time with somebody else? Now, Blood Bowl is a game that plays in leagues, it plays in tournaments. There's a very high likelihood you're going to be playing a game with a stranger you've never met before, so it's quite good to kind of think about what the social tips and tricks are to have the best possible game of Blood Bowl. So it was a great suggestion. We put it out on YouTube and we had a ton of great comments. So thank you for everybody on this one. This was a really emotive topic and we had some great suggestions. And what I've done is I've taken all the suggestions and kind of grouped them into a top 5 things. Okay, so there's going to be some suggestions here grouped together because I think it gives us the best way to talk through some great ways to make your Blood Bowl game, the scenario of your game, as good as it can be. Number 5 is time. So we had a ton of suggestions for this kind of thing, so I've grouped them together. Now the first one, be on time. So when I say be on time is be timely with turning up. You know, if you're at a league night, try and be there as on time as possible. If you're at a tournament, seriously be there for the round. If you're late to a tournament round, you're gonna... It's actually a really destructive thing to do for competitive fairness, first of all. However, life happens. If you're at a tournament, there's a good likelihood that there's a queue wherever the food is. If you're coming to league night, if you're driving somewhere, there's a good chance there's going to be traffic. So just do what you can to let people know you're going to be late and why. The TOs might be able to give you extra time for the round. The league organizer might be able to shuffle things around so that nobody's waiting more than they should. It seems like a really basic one, and it's simple simple politeness, I guess. But it was flagged up a lot, and I felt like it was worth touching on. Now, kind of barreled in with time is how long you take to do things on the Blood Bowl pitch. It can be a complicated game. There can be a lot of choices for you to make, and the situation on the board can be quite complicated. But do what you can to not take forever on your turns. This was one of the most common suggestions in this thread. There are going to be times where you really need to think, but do not get stuck in analysis paralysis. And if you feel like I'm a slow player or your opponent's a slow player, discuss timers. Do it at the beginning of the game. If you're playing in a tournament, do that at the beginning of the game. Say, hey, would you like to use a timer? No. Maybe the referee will come around at half time and say, where are you? And you're on turn 4 of the first half. That's the point at which you should maybe discuss turn timers. Now, turn timers are not that common in some places. They're almost ubiquitous in others. 4-minute turns are a really great way to get your pace up, and there's some absolute numpties out there like Richard Saxby who loves a 1 or 2 minute timer, and there's a whole bunch of tournaments called Speed Bowl tournaments piloted by I think Lunch Money and Rob from the Isle of Wight, where it is 2-minute turns and you get the whole game done in like 7 minutes. It's outrageous. I don't recommend that for everybody, but you want to make sure that you have enough time to get your game done. And you also want to make sure that you give your opponent a good experience and don't just keep them waiting for the whole amount of time. Don't be afraid to talk through what you're thinking about and try and keep your turns as quick as possible. Just try and be as quick as you can, and if you're taking a long time, talk through why, because it might help you, and secondly, it is a little bit of a better experience than just sitting there opposite someone who's silent for 6 minutes staring at the board. I'd start to worry. Number 4 is clarity. Be clear about things. Now this is a huge topic and I've bundled a whole bunch of things here because I think it comes nicely in one grouping. Let's start at the beginning. Models, numbers, skills. Your dudes on the pitch. Make sure it's clear what they are and who they are, and if it's a tournament or a league, what upgrades they've got. Blood Bowl is huge now. There's 29 teams, and there's like 30 something star players. There's a big amount of stuff. Now, most teams have 4 or 5 different players on them, which is quite good and quite simple. It means you can use lots of different models for your teams, but make sure it's clear what they are. Use the paint all my blitzers bases red kind of technique, that kind of stuff. But what you want to do is make sure that your opponent can see what's going on, and that so can you, and flip flop, you can see what's going on their side as well. Make sure your roster is clear if you are going to a league night, if you're playing a friendly game, if you're playing a tournament, do what you can to bring a printed roster. There you go, have a look at my roster. The players' numbers match up to the players' numbers on the pitch. Incredibly useful. I'm going to tell you a story now of what I would probably consider malicious compliance. And this is before we were running tournaments. We went to a tournament and there was a really lovely Norse team. And the rules of the tournament were your players must be numbered. And the Norse coach decided to use Norse runes to mark the numbers of their players on their team, which led to some confusing situations. Don't do that. Like, you know, use the transfers that come with the teams. You know, mark them. Put the transfers on the models. There's tons of different ways to do it. Even if you're only marking and modelling or numbering the ones that are actually leveled up. So when it comes to snotlings, for example, I do not bother giving them names. Generally speaking, I don't bother giving them numbers until they do something worthwhile. But that's because until they do that, they're all the same. And a snotling is a snotling is a snotling. An ogre is an ogre is an ogre, unless that ogre's got block, in which case, do something to show that. If you're in a league, in a tournament, you can go from as simple as using little elastic bands that are coloured to be like, yeah, my red guys will have whatever, this guy has whatever, to skill rings that you can 3D print them. You can get them from Willy Miniatures. I think Charlie Victor's done a whole bunch of stuff like that. You want to just make it as simple as possible, and that will also be true for yourself. You don't want to make a block with the guy who doesn't have block because you didn't mark the guy who's got block, and now you've put yourself in a pickle. You also don't want to ambush your opponent and be like, yeah, that guy's got block, and they have no idea because you've not marked it. So clear roster, clear players, clear skills. You need to make sure that people can make the right decisions. If you don't, what's going to happen is some kind of mix between entrapment and just costing you time, because you're just losing time by being inefficient. Offer reminders of your skills if you can. So if your opponent says, right, I'm going to move this guy out, your guy's got tackle, go, yep, that's fine, but just so you know, that guy's got tackle. Or I'm going to block that guy, yep, that guy's got block. If you've marked them with a skill ring, if they've got the loom bands on, it's there for them to see. Just trying to make sure that you have as much clarity of the situation as possible, because that is going to save you time and it's going to save you emotional fatigue, okay? Because if you make a decision and it turns out it wasn't what you thought, you've lost points. Mental, physical, spiritual points, because you weren't sure what was going on or you've been gotcha'd. That's not really how Blood Bowl works. Talk through your actions, and that is really all of the time. It will help you think about stuff, like we just said in time, but also you want your opponent to understand what's going on. And the most frequent one we had about this was, do not roll dice before saying why, where, and giving your opponent an opportunity to flag up something. Worst thing you can do is be like, yep, I'm going to dodge this guy out, roll the dice. Actually, that's not fair. Worst thing you can do is roll a dice, I'm dodging this guy out. That guy's got prehensile tail. You haven't thought. It's just absolute mess of a situation. Don't do that. Be like, right, I'm going to activate this guy. I'm going to dodge him to that square there. Oh, did you know my guy's got prehensile tail? Ooh, okay, right. Let's redo that. And part of clarity, and we will come to this later on, is about making sure that you've got that flow of understanding with what's okay and what's not okay. And the best thing to do that is to talk through what you're doing before you do it. It just makes sense. Number 3, track the game state. Now, this is very much tied into clarity, but this is more about, actually, the clarity bit is kind of what you can do before the game. The game state is what you do in the game. And I know we've done like a whole bunch of shows series top fives that are all about move your markers, but please move your markers. Work with your opponent to move your markers. Announce the turn number. This is the biggest recommendation ever. You finish your turn 4, you say, right, finish my turn 4. All right, over to you. That's your turn 5 now, isn't it? It's that extra audible prompt to just be like, oh, yeah, no, let's move my turn marker. Really helpful. Gone are the days where if you didn't move a turn marker, you'd be penalised. Terrible rule. Again, gotcha. Not really what Blood Bowl's all about. But if you've watched the Bonehead Championship, I'm pretty sure there was one of our games where we lost a turn because we didn't move our turn markers. Or we moved them twice because we weren't sure. It happens. If you're working together, be like, right, cool, my turn 4, right, that's the end of my turn 4, your turn 5 now. Okay, cool. My turn 5, move my turn marker. Keeps that game clear, keeps it fair, keeps it understandable, and really just keeps on top of what's going on. Turn your miniatures was a great suggestion, and I'm a huge proponent of this. There's a couple of different ways to do it. The way I like to do it, and what you'll see on the Bonehead Championship most of the time, is at the beginning of my turn, I make sure all my dudes are facing you. That's not fair. At the end of my turn, I'll make sure all of my dudes are facing you. So you can see the model, you can see the number, you can see the skill rings, okay? Make it as clear as possible. During my turn, as I activate the models, I'll turn them to face me so that I know they've moved. And at the end of my turn, I'll swivel all back around again. It means that I don't double activate somebody. It means my opponent gets an opportunity to see what's going on. The only model you can't do it with is a giant, but if you can't remember whether you've moved a giant in a turn or not, you're taking too long for the turn. And it's really helpful because it, again, eliminates that grey area. That's what I found works really well, and that's what I know has been suggested loads. There's a slight alternative that people they'll do one turn and they'll face them towards them when they're finished, and then the next turn they'll turn them around to face back to you. Just make sure you're being clear about what's going on, and it will help prevent any feel bads. And pay attention to the game. If you're not taking your turn, watch the game. Okay, it's going to save you time while you're thinking about stuff when it comes to activating your turn, but also you can help your opponent make sure things are clear. You can make recommendations. If you're playing competitively, probably not the best thing to do. If you're playing a league or playing a friendly or coaching someone, then yeah, it's definitely a great thing to do. You can be like, right, yeah, that's not bad, but you've left him on the sideline and my guy's got frenzy here. Oh, okay, that's great, thank you. Be involved, and that's kind of how that goes. But this is all about making it as clear as possible, which makes it as fair as possible, as fun as possible, and as quick as possible. Number 2, set the scene. This is at the beginning of the match. You've just been paired up at a tournament. You've just come to league night. You've sat down with your buddy you haven't seen for a while, and you just want to play a game. Introduce yourself. It's a weird one. If you already know them, then fair enough. But actually be like, hey, how you been? Like, get that contract, get that engagement started. The happier you are and the easier you find it to communicate with each other, the quicker you'll be able to resolve things in game, and the more in sync you get. So in my job, everything's virtual now, right? So introducing yourself is really, really, really useful. We have a look at just changing departments. You have a look at your stakeholders. You set up a quick conversation. You'd be like, hey, be great to catch you for 5 minutes and just introduce ourselves. Next time you see each other, you've got that level. It's so much easier. The same is true of Blood Bowl. You sit down and be like, hey, I'm Ben, how you doing? Yeah, what you running? Oh, Norse, cool. Yeah, cool, brilliant. Wicked, I'm running this. How's it going? Then there's a couple of things that is a very polite, and you guys absolutely love these, and I think it's really appropriate, especially given what we've just been through, and that is touching miniatures. During the height of playing Blood Bowl in COVID or just after COVID, it was like, do not touch your opponent's models. Now, you still have to have that conversation. It's polite. There are some people that paint their models beautifully. There are some models out there that are fragile as heck. There are some chunky metal models that are held together by wishes and good intentions. You do not want to be the dude that knocks over somebody's demon and just has them shatter into a million pieces. No. What you want to do is be like, hey, just want you to know, I'm fine with you touching my models. Yeah, me too. Or like, hey, this team looks gorgeous. Like, do you want to move them when I say, no, it's fine, you go for it. Have that discussion. And quite frankly, if you don't want someone touching your models, just be like, yeah, no, I'll move them. They're quite fragile. You know, I really like my team. You know, I'm just working on this. I really like it. It's also quite a nice way to get around the my opponent is just munching through a bag of Cheetos. First of all, at any event, if you're playing with, oh my gosh, if you're playing with cards, you're playing with models, you're going to have a snack. Try your best to keep your hands as clean as possible, especially in this post-COVID world, and it all ties into this setting the scene element to it. Are you okay with somebody else touching your models? Are they okay with you touching yours? It's a good place to start. Now, cocked dice. Oh, this is a cracking one, and so many people flagged this one up. So a cocked dice is a dice that does not land flat. Agree this at the beginning of the game. Be like, hey, I'm Ben, how's your day going? Cool, right? Yeah, I just want you to know I'm fine touching my models. If you don't want me to touch yours because they look gorgeous, that's absolutely fine. I'll talk you through it. Yeah, brilliant, cool. Cocked dice, I'm going to say dice that roll off the table, dice that aren't flat are going to be a cocked dice for me. No good. If you're using a dice cup, if you're using a dice tray, you know, a dice that goes out of the tray, I'm going to no-go. Set it up, set the scene. Then you don't have any like, is that flat? Is that not flat? Is that okay? You're going to keep that? Because you can set up a situation where you roll a pow and it's a dodgy-looking dice, you keep it. You roll a 1, it's a dodgy-looking dice, and you don't keep it. That's not okay, and it's a really solid flag. And I'm going to bring up turn timers again here. So this is all part of setting the scene. Are you okay with me moving your models? What are we going to call a cocked die or not? And do you want to use turn timers? No, it's fine. Let's see how we are at half time. Is normally what they'll respond. Will be like, yes, actually, you know what? I'm trying to keep my pace up this round. I'm a bit of a slow player, so I'd really like to use turn timers because it keeps me on track and I don't want to slow you down. Great, fine. Let's use turn timers. No worries at all. And talk through your team, minis, and skills. Harkens back to clarity and keeping things nice, but you know, set up your team, be like, hey, this is my Norse team, these red guys, they've got this, the blue guys have got block, the green guys have got guard, this giant thing is a Yeti. Just make sure you're setting the scene and giving yourself the best opportunity to have a really good game. And the number one thing that you guys flagged up, and I quite frankly agree with, it's not quite the Woolreton rule, but it is pretty close. Be a good human. And this ties up everything we've had here. And I'm a bit shocked that so many people suggested this, because this is kind of basic stuff. And talking about basic stuff, number 1 on the top 4 ways to be a good human, basic hygiene. This was flagged up in many comments. Wash. Be clean. Smell nice. Be tidy looking if you can, if you're fussed. And this also comes into hands and cleanliness. Okay, if these days, if you're playing in a tournament, maybe some anti-back hand gel's a great one. If you are chomping on a big bag of Doritos, try and keep your hands as clean as possible. It's just politeness, and what you're trying to do is don't want to make anyone feel awkward. You don't want to make it, you just need to make it as nice for your opponent as possible. And on that factor, share the pain. So this is somehow, and ties it, had some great suggestions, like don't run around the table screaming loser when you win. That's fair. Blood Bowl is a beautiful amalgamation of decision and destiny, is probably the best way to put it. Those two are not mutually exclusive things. If your opponent rolls quad skulls, 2 skulls into another 2 skulls, be like, oh, that is brutal luck. We've all had that game where your opponent is just rolling 1s and they can't achieve anything. You're like, oh, that is a horrific. If you've watched the Bonehead Championship, you will see that. Share in their pain and share in their success. There are going to be some times where you feel real salty because you've rolled nothing but dead faces and they've rolled explosions, and it's just horrific. Well, it's going to happen. The law of fates and averages means it's going to happen the other way around at some point as well. It just may not be today. But share their pain, share the success, and just remember that it's a game. Jenny flagged this one up, and I think it's probably the best comment we had, which is just, remember you're just playing a game. You're there to have fun. You're there to build a story. It's true. And the dice are there to ruin your day. So be prepared for that and share in that dice journey with your opponent. Have a chat. Like, you're there to play a game. You've got these decisions going on. But ask them how their day was. Tell them how nice their models look. That's cool. How have you done that? Or, ooh, that was a good move. Just be there to engage and have that conversation and just give a really good experience. You'll get it back and you'll love it. And it's a great opportunity to meet people and have a really good time and work together. Ties in everything. You are one half of a team that is building a story and a competition. If you are disengaged, if you are done, if you are out, be open and honest with your opponent. There's going to be times where you are just absolutely wrecked because it's round 4 in a tournament, of the second day of a tournament. It's bad, you're hungover, you're tired, you're ill. Talk to your opponent and just be like, this is awful, I'm really sorry, like, I'm not enjoying myself. And then work together to make the best of that situation. If you're feeling rough, just be like, hey, that's fine, let's work through this, like, don't worry about it, let's do this. You can turn it into a coaching example. You can just both bin it off. Whatever works, because there are going to be sometimes you're playing a league game, you're playing a friendly game where actually neither of you are feeling it. So don't play. Like, call it. Talk to your league guy and be like, guys, we're having no fun here. We're going to pause. We're going to come back next week. You know, we're going to move this game another time. Doesn't necessarily work in a tournament. Tournaments are difficult because you expect to have a big day. It's quite mentally draining in a tournament. But work together to make the best of any situation. Make the best of any dice situation. Make the best of any top table or bottom table situation. Just go and have as much fun as you can. Okay, we had an absolute ton of suggestions. It was an awesome thread. It got a bit heated in some places, and it just was inspiring in others. So I cannot say thank you enough. A couple of things we didn't mention that I think are deserving of a mention. One of them was support the venue. I love this one so much. If you're playing in a local friendly game store, support it. If they've got food, buy the food. If they've got toys, buy the toys. You know, venues, tournament runners, it's a thin margin and it costs time. Be there to support them. I thought that was an absolutely brilliant shout. What else do we have? Because like I said, there was an absolute ton of great suggestions. Takebacks was the other one I wanted to talk about. So in my examples, as we were going through this, you'll know that there's been a couple of times where I'm like, that guy's got this. Oh, maybe I won't do that. Part of setting the scene, and probably should have talked about it there, is actually like talk through what's acceptable and what's not acceptable. That is a challenging one and sits kind of outside the realm, but one great suggestion is that once a die is about to be rolled or being rolled, you're locked in. Okay, you cannot take back something when you've rolled a dice, but if you've moved a guy there and you go, oh, actually, can I move him there instead? You know, be gracious and work with it. One move back is probably the limit, I would say. Not just going to redo my turn, but if you place a guy there and you go, cool, right, now I'm going to activate this guy. Oh, actually, I need him to be there. Is it right if I just change him? One player back is fine, but if you're in a competitive environment, if it's playoff time for your league, if you're in the tournament, be aware that it's competitive and just be like, no, I've moved him, I'm done. Once I take my hand off the model, I'm locked in with that guy. That's kind of chess rules, fits in with tournaments and kind of the competitive end of a league, if playing a casual game, whatever, work with your opponent. Etiquette is a really tough one, and social contract is a really, really tough one. You are not just playing against your opponent, you are massively playing against the game. So the enemy of my enemy is my friend. The enemy is Blood Bowl. Your friend is your opponent. Team up, take it on, and win. Anyway, thank you ever so much for watching. Do let me know if I've missed anything, if there are any good points you agree with or disagree with. This is the best place for us to discuss this kind of stuff. And then years from now, someone's going to go, Blood Bowl Etiquette, and they're going to see what you think. And that's really useful for everybody. So thank you very much. I'm going to wrap up. We'll be back soon with more Blood Bowl content. Happy, polite Blood Bowling. Thanks very much for watching. We really appreciate your support. If you want to help support the channel even further, please like and subscribe, or come join us on our Patreon. We have early access to content. We get loads of feedback from you guys, and we try and do competitions as much as we can. Or you can get yourself some Bonehead podcast merch on our Spreadshirt site. So if you want to support a team, especially for the Bonehead Championship, you can pick up a shirt, a mug, things like that. It all helps support the channel, and we really appreciate it. Anyway, links below. Thank you very much. Happy blocking.